Thanks very much for staying with us. Time now for Eye on Africa with me, Georgia Calvin-Smith. Tonight, Nigeria's economy is beginning to feel the pinch of the lockdown imposed in late March in Lagos and Abuja to slow the spread of the coronavirus. Millions of people working in the informal sector have been particularly affected. Also in Madagascar, thousands rush to travel in the small window left as airports and bus stations have been left open until Thursday despite lockdown in some counties. And musicians from a Senegalese pro-democracy political movement are now trying to get people to do their bit to stop the spread of coronavirus with a new song. Yonema, which translates as "Enough is Enough," usually uses its reach to encourage political activism. But first, Africa is due to receive a share of 20 billion euros of emergency funding from the European Union meant to help fight the coronavirus pandemic. Countries in Asia, Latin America and the Balkans will also receive support. The African Union fears that economies on the continent could be strangled by the health crisis and warns that up to 20 million jobs could be lost and African GDP could contract by 4.5%. Nigeria, Africa's top economy, is already suffering because of a lockdown brought in Lagos and Abuja at the end of March. Laurent Berstecker has more.
In her small workshop in Lagos, Kemi Adepoju is dusting off her latest creations. Since the start of the lockdown, which began on March 30th in Nigeria, the seamstress hasn't received any new orders, and all of the dresses she already made are still waiting to be picked up by clients. Like Kimi, millions of Nigerians work in the informal sector and have received little to no support from the government to help them get through the epidemic. Even food vendors worry about the impact an extended lockdown could have on their business.
If the lockdown should take longer than it's supposed to, people won't have money to purchase food again. So everything they'll be taking will be on credit and it will affect us a lot.
Nigerian authorities recently announced a moratorium for small businesses to repay loans and said they've begun making cash transfers to the country's poorest households. But with the World Bank saying 60% of Nigerians do not have a bank account, the money is unlikely to reach those who need it the most.
The head of the World Health Organization has brushed aside criticism of the organization from the US. Tedros Adhanom Ghebreyesus has said that he does not care about politics and that his focus is on reining in the coronavirus pandemic. On Tuesday, US President Donald Trump accused the UN agency of being China-centric and threatened to review funding to the WHO. The AU chief and leaders of South Africa, Rwanda and Namibia have been quick to defend Ghebreyesus, who is Ethiopian and the WHO's first African Director General. Elsewhere, Somalia has reported its first coronavirus death. The country's officially logged only 12 positive cases, but says that transmission now appears to be happening amongst people with no history of foreign travel. Meanwhile, Ethiopia and Liberia have both declared states of emergency in their bids to stop the spread of COVID-19. Ethiopia has recorded 52 cases and 2 deaths. Liberia has ordered a 2-week lockdown for 4 counties, including the capital. That's due to start on Saturday. In Kenya, police have been accused of being heavy-handed in enforcing a dawn-to-dusk curfew. Rights groups say that at least 10 people have been killed since the restrictions were brought in on March 27th. Our team reports.
Late afternoon at the entrance to Nairobi's Kibera slum. Residents are in a hurry to get home before the start of the curfew, brought in to stop the spread of COVID-19.
After 7, the police are here, so they rush people into the house. So people are trying to go in fast before the 7 deadline. Otherwise, when 7 reaches, the police are harassing people.
Kenyan police have been accused of using disproportionate violence in enforcing the restrictions. These images show officers chasing commuters in downtown Mombasa 2 hours before curfew. But it is after dark that most of the violence takes place. 2 days ago, this man arrived home in Canberra after 7 p.m. because he couldn't find a bus back. He says he was beaten up by police and thinks they may have broken his wrist.
They don't ask me anything. They started harassing me and beating me. I was thoroughly beaten. Then I got injured. I got pain even by now yesterday. Even as you can see my hand, I got pain. Even at this one of my leg, I can't even walk in a straight way.
Rights campaigners have condemned the brutality and say at least 10 people have been killed by police violence since March 27th. They say the crackdowns are abusive and counterproductive in the fight against coronavirus.
We have had reports of people having accidents trying to get home because they were terrified that they would be beaten by police. We have had instances of doctors not being able to go to take care of patients that need emergency health care because they don't know whether they will be beaten by police. So it does essentially break down, I guess, the trust that's needed for people to do things that may be necessary in a period like this.
Even before the fight back against COVID-19, Kenyan police had long been accused of using excessive force. The police declined to respond to our request for an interview, but President Uhuru Kenyatta has publicly apologised for the violence used by police to enforce the curfew. He promised that those responsible would be brought to justice. 4 officers have already been suspended, but trust between working-class communities and the police remains low.
In Madagascar, 3 towns are locked down again for the next 15 days, but airports and bus stations have been left open until Thursday to allow people to get back to their hometowns or return to the capital. Thousands rushed to travel in the small window. Kyle Borja tells us more.
I am in one of the main bus stations of the capital, and you can see behind me thousands of people have been waiting for hours to leave. But it takes time for the authorities to check each and every passenger, write down their names, their phone numbers, their destinations, to find them if needed. They also have to make sure all the coaches are disinfected, that everyone gets a mask, and that every coach has a hydroalcoholic gel. There are only 27 staff members from the Ministry of Public Health and only 1 organization to check thousands of people. So obviously, it's almost impossible to stick to social distancing, to give masks to everyone and do official tests. So only temperatures are being checked. Authorities told me they're doing their best to control everyone and make sure these massive departures happen as safely as possible. Some have criticized the decision to let people travel, but at the same time, it's the best way to control the departures because people would have done so anyway by any means. Some passengers told me they have been suffering in the capital without any job, without any money because of the lockdown.
If we stay here, we have nothing to eat in Antananarivo, and we're far from our wives and kids. We have no choice but to leave, despite the high price of the ticket. If I stay here, I would die. That's the problem.
I arrived at the station at 5 a.m. We're still here now. We paid $37 to go to Ambilobi. Staying here makes things difficult for us. There is no way to find money, so we are forced to go back to our hometown.
So although the mass departures are risky by creating conditions that could lead to the spread of the virus, authorities fear trying to stop people leaving could be worse.
Gael Borja there for us. Now, Senegal has declared a state of emergency and imposed a nighttime curfew in its coronavirus fight back. Meanwhile, musicians from a pro-democracy political movement called Yonema are trying to encourage people to do their bit to stop the spread of the illness. Yonema translates as enough is enough and usually uses its reach to encourage political activism. France 24 spoke to them about the sounds of their latest health-focused campaign.
Hazmat suits, not designer labels for these rappers in a Dakar hospital. Their song, Fagaru Si Coronavirus, translates as coronavirus warning in Wolof. It's the work of Senegal's rapping activists, Yonema, who formed in 2011. Now they're trying to get a message out to young people.
Pourquoi les jeunes? Parce que les jeunes représentent 65% de la population et ils sont très connectés à la culture hip-hop. C'est pourquoi effectivement ça va beaucoup aider à corriger ce fake news qui consiste à faire croire que c'est l'Occident qui est en train de comploter contre l'Afrique.
Ceci n'est pas normal, vos vidéos pour le buzz, des intox sur des intox. Ceci n'est pas normal, on parle de millions de vies humaines, le Sénégalais est expert en tout, mais à chaque
The video reminds people to be careful about hygiene, but the idea of confinement and social distancing is a little more difficult given the local context.
La manière de vivre des Sénégalais est très communautaire. Et puis, pour vivre, les Sénégalais majoritairement n'ont pas assez de ressources pour acheter des vivres et les garder à la maison. Les gens vivent au jour le jour.
Il est question de prévenir, évitons les débats puérils. L'heure est grave, tous unis, faisons un sur le ring.
The Yonamar collective is usually very critical of the authorities, but this time the rappers have the seal of approval from the Ministry of Health.
Oui, le mouvement Yanamar est critique, mais le mouvement Yanamar est très juste. Nous sommes tous ensemble avec l'État parce qu'aujourd'hui l'adversaire, c'est la pandémie.
Their videos being broadcast on public and private channels and shared widely on social media. Meanwhile, the collective's handing out masks and antiseptic gel in Dakar, where it's not about street cred, but safety.
And finally, 92-year-old Ahmed Ismail Hussein Hudaydi passed away from COVID-19 in London. During his life, the Somali described his devotion for the oud as an illness. The musician was well known as a figure in the Somali independence movement and a founding father of contemporary music in the country. We'll leave you with the sounds of his passions. Thanks for watching. Do so again.